afternoon, and welcome to My Harlem Portraits, the show that aims at shedding the light on the fundamental contribution of African Americans to the building of this country and on Black excellence. This is February and it's Black History Month. It is actually the 100-year celebration of Black History Month. And in a moment in which Black history is under attack of being erased from schools, libraries, and the cultural scene in general, our conversation today is of the utmost importance. Our guest, in fact, is a pioneer, is a trailblazer who has dedicated his life to bringing Black creativity in the arts, theater, films, and music to the foreground at a global level, from his native Harlem, the Mecca of Black culture. I'm honored to have with us Mr. VOZA Rivers. Welcome to My Harlem Portraits.
Maria, thank you so much for having me on today. I celebrate February, Black History Month, as so many other Americans do. And having this conversation with you just brings back to me what I've inherited and what I've been doing. This is the 61st year for the theater that I had, New Heritage Theater Group, which is now celebrating its 61st anniversary, founded by Roger Furman, a member of the American Negro Theater of the 1940s.
Wow.
During 1940s, when Roger joined the American Negro Theater, he was one of the youngest members, but you also had Sidney Poitier, Harry Belafonte, Ozzie Davis, and Ruby Dee, and a host of other artists. Roger told me that the theater company in 1940 was something that made a great impression on his life. He was a set designer, he was an actor, he was a playwright. But he said, most importantly, he was surrounded by a real group of talented people. And when the theater based in Harlem at the library on 135th Street made their first major show called Anna Lucasta and took it to Broadway, downtown, the producers from the Broadway theater saw all this great talent and started booking them in their shows downtown, which left a gap for what was happening uptown. So now a lot of the actors looked downtown for employment opportunities and left what they were doing uptown vacant. So that American Negro Theater only lasted for 9 years. Roger, many years later, in 1964, decided he was going to start his own theater company. Mm-hmm. I happened to have gone to a public speaking class at a YWCA in Harlem because I was really concerned about what was happening across the country, more importantly in the South, with the segregation aspects. And there was a riot in '64 in Harlem and in Brooklyn because a police officer shot a young man, and there was just mass confusion. However, because I lived in Harlem, if I walked on 125th Street, I was probably going to be approached by a journalist because they were all over asking people what did they think about what was happening, et cetera, et cetera. For me, I always felt that I didn't want to capture what I felt in long sentences. I wanted to be very direct. I'm a soft-spoken guy, and I wanted to prepare myself. So I go to the Y to take a public speaking class lecture. And there was Roger Furman at that lecture. Mm-hmm. And Roger Furman starts talking about the American Negro Theater. And he says, I'm starting my new theater. And guys, look who was in my theater company with me. and I'm going to do my branch and pay tribute to the American Negro Theater and VOZA. I mean, and to the art, to those people that were present. If you want to join up with me. I did not
Wow.
say that I was interested. Roger Furman came to me and says, "What, young man, why aren't you interested?" I'm 19 years old, and I says, "Well, I don't want to be an actor. You're talking about a theater company. I'm not interested in that. I came to be able to be more articulate about what I wanted to say, and I want to be clear." And he said, "Oh, you should know something, about uh, Oz, not Harry Belafonte, but you know that
Sidney Poitier.
Portier
Mm.
was a member of the company." And I says, "Oh my God, yeah, I didn't know that." He says, "Yeah, yeah, he tried out for the theater company 3 times, and he was stuttering, and his reading ability, because we gave him scripts to read, wasn't clear, and he tried out 3 times. The third time he came, one of the senior members of the company, Gertrude Jeanette, told Sidney a story about how she came to the company and she had problems and she was stuttering, and that it would really be beneficial for Sidney to come back with a little secret that the theater people knew, and that was get a bottle of wine, take out the corkscrew, put it in your mouth, and have a conversation. And he didn't believe it, but he did it. And lo and behold, the next time he came to the theater company for the auditions, he made it. And that was
Wow.
a great story. It was a great story. So now Roger says to me and tells me the story, and then I'm saying, I don't want to be an actor. I don't know anything about acting, but I can volunteer. And if you want me to be a part of your company that you're starting, I have a car. I could help you if you have to go get props. He says, "No, I could use you to be in the box office, front of house. I may need you to help me if I'm busy. You can greet people when they come into the theater." I said, "Yes, those things I can do." And that's what I did. And I did that for 6 years.
Wow.
6 years, he has a conversation with me, and I was a volunteer. And he said, "Voza, I really want to concentrate on my writing and on the plays that I want to produce. And I would love for you to be able to handle the business side. I've seen you do things uh, that would be beneficial to the theater." And I said, "Well, that's okay if you want me to work on the business side." I said, "But remember, just like I volunteered, I'll be the business manager. You don't have to pay me anything because I want to do it. This is my give back." And he said, "I'll accept that." I said, "But I was thinking, Roger," I said, "whatever you wanted to pay me, why don't we put it into a rainy day fund? So if something happens, you have those dollars stored for that." He says, "See, that's why I need you, because you're brilliant and and you're thinking about the theater in ways I wasn't even thinking about it." And that began my journey of being a member of New Heritage Repertory Theater, which was the original name of the theater. And like I said, you come and buy your ticket. It was VOZA in the box office. Next time you came, here was VOZA escorting you to your seat and saying, "Welcome to New Heritage Theater. Please bring no bad vibes," because that was a big sign he had on the front of the theater. "Please don't bring no bad vibes." And the community loved it. And I was able to sit and see the impact that good community theater could do. However, uh, a few years later, Roger died of AIDS, and Roger asked if not Roger, but the board of directors asked if I would take over the theater. And I said, absolutely not. I could not walk. I could not walk in Roger Furman's shoes. I was a box office person and a greeter. I wasn't a producer. And they said, well, Voza, you worked with Roger and he wasn't easy to get along with. And you guys worked in such a good team that I know he would be honored if you continued his legacy. But I, on the other hand, knew what I was capable of, and I wasn't capable of running the theater. I said no. And the next morning, I got a call from Ruby D, and then she said, Voza, I just heard that you said no, but you meant to say yes because you need to go to the theater. And I said, no, Ruby, I can't. She said, no, Voza, don't tell me what you can't do. I said, you said yes, and you're going to take over the theater. You're going to keep Roger's legacy alive. And guess what? You got me and Ozzy. We're going to be there for you. We'll be your guardians. We're going to make sure that you're okay. And that began my long journey. The other person, and I want to say this because he's no longer with us, was Woody
Yes.
King. And Woody King had his theater downtown on Christopher Street. And during this period of me now understanding that I needed to know more about theater and see theater plays other than what Roger was doing, I would go down on Christopher Street and see Woody's plays. But Woody, nobody knew me because I was just a volunteer. But I saw great theater, and I thought now it would really be great what I've seen before. Now that I'm going to be in a leadership position, that I could reach out to Woody and see if we could work together. Because I knew what I didn't know,
Yes.
what I was capable of. And I went to Woody and spoke to him, and, and he had just finished a play with Denzel Washington,
Wow.
Chickens Come Home to Roost, and Denzel was getting ready to go and do a movie, and Woody said we're going to revamp the show, and we should do it together. And that began my first relationship with Woody King. We did that show, sold out the performances, and it started traveling around the country. And then Woody and I decided that we're going to work together. We're going to be collaborating. He's downtown, I'm uptown, but we both Harlemites. And so that relationship was special to me, just like my relationship with Roger Furman. So Woody
And
passed a few,
I would like to say here, because Woody just passed,
yes,
that this recognition that they are giving to him is very important because your theaters are only the only two black theaters that still exist from those times. The two
yes,
companies that still exist. So this
with
is,
the fountain, yes.
yes. So
So
this is
Maria,
very
I
important.
understand exactly what's on my plate now about the legacy. And it's not only my legacy, because you have to go back to the 1940s, because Roger wanted that legacy to be a part of his legacy. Roger's not here, so that means there's the 1940s and there's Roger's legacy that now is to me. Ossie Davis and Ruby Dee are not here.
Yeah.
And it was because of them, and I always knew that I could depend on them to help me if I had a challenge.
Mm.
And so I'm very, very lucky because before Roger died, he wanted to expand the reach of the theater. He said, we're global. I mean, we're local in Harlem, but what I want to do is to be global. And he started talking about London and the Indian community because he wanted to do plays by Indians. And I said, "Oh, Roger, this is really very interesting." He said, "Yeah, Voza, we should be exposed to all of these different cultures." But he never got a chance to do it. And I remembered it. And that's when I was fortunate enough uh, to see someone else who introduced me to South Africa. And that's what happened with South African theater with me.
Yes, because among the numerous vital projects that you have championed, you brought to Broadway in 1988 the acclaimed South African musical Sarafina,
Yes.
partnership with Lincoln Center. And you have exposed this global Black narrative to different audiences. And your work has been presented in the United States, in Japan, in South Africa, in Togo, Nigeria, Cuba, Canada, and United Kingdom. And this is this capacity that you have always had of bridging cultures, bringing different cultures together is one of the things that I've always admired most in you. And now you are telling me where this came from. I was always wondering, where did that stem from? So tell me a little bit about this Sarafina happened, because the story is pretty interesting. How you met the
So,
two.
yeah. So I met a young man named Duma Ngluvu who was in the United States from South Africa, staying with Hugh Masekela, the musician.
Wow.
What happened is that Duma met me and spoke enthusiastically about South African theater and what was happening and how they were using that theater to tear down the walls of apartheid.
Yes.
And Duma shared with me there was a play downtown on Christopher Street and at the Lucille Hotel Theater with two actors, and the name of the show was called Woza Albert. Uh, Albert was Albert Lutuli. He was a founding member with Nelson Mandela of the African National Congress.
Mhm.
And and he and this play that they were doing was a celebration to him. So I go see the play, and there are two actors. Play is over. Duma says, I want you to meet the cast. So after the play is over, we're waiting. They come out, and Duma introduced me. He said to Mongani and Percy, this is VOZA Rivers. They said, oh, and they hugged me. You're from South Africa, man. It's great meeting you. I said, no, I'm not from South Africa. I said, he said, no, Woza, because the name of the
Yeah.
play was Woza
Yeah.
Albert. And I said, no, my name is Voza, VOZA, and you're saying WOZA. And we laughed, we hugged. Says, oh no, man,
Your
you're
brother.
South African. That's how we're gonna look at you. And then I shared with them that this was a pleasure. I had not seen acting like this. The messages were strong, and you two actors just got nominated and won the Obie Awards for
Wow.
your show. I said, this is really something. I said, yeah, well, what are you doing? I told them about the theater up in Harlem. They said, oh my God, we heard of Harlem. We haven't seen any Black people. So when can we go to Harlem? And you can take this show. And I said, well, no, you're under a contract with the Lucille Hotel Theater. You have to stay here. He said, but the show is over. It's going to be over. And we should go
Managed to
uptown.
take them.
And the person for representing bringing the artist here, Gary McAvey, listened and looked at us talking, and he said, Boza, these guys are finished to run down at our theater. So if they wanted to do something else on their own, they can do it because I have the tickets to send them back, whatever the date was, but what they do between now and then is on them.
Mhm.
And a light came on, and all of us looked at each other and said, can we go to Harlem? There was a New York Times reporter
Mhm.
who was there listening to the conversation. And she said, you know what? This would be a great story from Johannesburg
To Harlem.
to the village
To Harlem.
to Harlem.
Mhm.
And she wrote that article on the front page of the entertainment section of the New York Times.
Wow.
And that was another lightning rod for our theater to be listed
Yeah.
in something like the New York Times. And I brought that play. So now you got a play from South Africa that won the Obie Awards, and I'm bringing it uptown for 3 performances.
Fantastic.
And we did in our little theater the shows. Maria, you would have laughed because people were online to see these shows. Now, white and black, the community, baby, what's going on up there? What you guys doing? All these white people going upstairs in this building. What's going on? And so we shared with them. So what happened is that after the first night, there were only the props for the play were just 2 boxes on stage.
Wow.
So the next performance, people were bringing their folding chairs because they heard that the theater didn't have any more seats. So they were on the line with folding chairs going upstairs to the top of this building, and I put them on the stage with the actors
Oh my God.
because we had no more
Yeah,
space. If the fire
that's
department
fantastic.
came, if the fire department came, I would have been arrested. So for code violations, but it worked, and the guys were so happy, and the audience was so appreciative, and some of the people from downtown who were theater producers came uptown to see the difference between those two actors and what they did downtown and how the energy was different uptown.
Yeah.
Those guys went away and wrote a second play. And the second play was called a Sinamali. And a Sinamali is a Zulu word for we have no money. And that play dealt with apartheid and the land grabbing by the apartheid government from the indigenous people and then taxing them at these exorbitant rates for their own land. And these and the indigenous people says, Asinamale, we have no money.
Yeah.
And that was the play that we wanted to do. And I said, absolutely. Um, I said that I'm coming to South Africa because they invited me. I'm going to come and see what you guys are doing. And I went to the South African embassy to get a visa. And they told me, no, they're not going to give me a visa. You are doing work that's against our government, and we don't want you here.
Yeah.
And I said, but it's only a play. No, we don't want you here. So I came back to the office and I called the guys and said, hey, man, I want to see the play, but I can't come. They said, but VOZA, we've been rehearsing and we're depending on you. I says, well, I can't do it. He says, hold on, VOZA, I want you to listen to something. And so over the phone, they're in rehearsal and I'm listening. And I said, oh my God, this
Wow.
is so great. I got to figure it out. So now, with that knowledge, now that I really want to do it and I have to bring them here, I went to my funders. Traditional funding sources for a small theater comes from grants. And I went to the grant holders to tell them what I wanted to do. And they said, Voza, you just took over the theater and you're talking about bringing people 10,000 miles away to come into your little theater. And you want us to support that. What about all of the African American actors who are in Harlem or in New York City? And I said, but that's what I was doing with Roger for 20 years.
Yeah.
So now it's my opportunity to expand his vision where he wanted to go. He says, sounds good, Voza, but right now we're not able to give you money to do what you said you want to do. And with that, I was disappointed until another call to the guys telling me that they were in rehearsal with the play with another producer in South Africa, and some henchmen from the government came into the church with machetes and killed that producer, sliced him and killed him, and the cast members all had to run to safety
For their life.
and for their lives. And it was when I heard that I just said, I got to do something to
Mhm.
bring these guys back. So with Gary McAvey, the person that I had mentioned who did the show downtown, we were able, and I was able to get some money I had saved for my kids' college tuition to put it together to bring that show into the United States. So our little theater, the 5 actors, sight unseen, only on a telephone. And when I did it, Harry Belafonte came.
Wow.
Masekela came,
You must take care.
Mary McCable, Paul Simon, they all came to our little theater. And with that, a year later, it went to Broadway.
Harry
Harry
Belafonte,
Belafonte,
Yuma Sekela,
yeah,
Miriam Makeba,
Paul Simon,
Paul Simon. Come on. Wow. Everybody was there. There must be
yes.
incredible
And that
people.
show went to Broadway a year later. So again, I was blessed. Those guys were very, very impressed and committed to me and said, Bosa, you have to do all of the things that we do. They have to come to you because you're going to be our representative. And the name of their theater company was Committed Artists. Uh, and I had to create Committed Artists USA. And that's what I did. So now they go back, they're working, and they're talking about a new play around children. And they said, Boza, this is the new play. You have to do it. So get ready. I said, okay. I said, well, tell me more about it. He says, don't you worry about it. You have to do it. I says, well, he says, we're going to be singing and dancing. You're going to have all the kids. You're going to have musicians. You're going to be, says, but how many actors? And you're telling me I got musicians. You say,
Yeah.
you know how small my theaters. Don't worry about it, Boza. Don't worry about it. When I finally found out what they were talking about, they said, oh, I said, guys gotta tell me if I'm supposed to do it. Says, well, we got 35 actors and musicians. So what are you talking about, 35 actors and musicians? Oh, got a small theater. I can't afford that, you
Mhm.
know? And Lincoln Center, who had seen some of the other plays, the other 2 plays, came on board and they said that they were go to South Africa. And I was able to go when Lincoln Center went, Gregory Mosher from Lincoln Center.
Mhm.
And we all saw the play and we said, this has to come to the United States. And Lincoln Center said, we'll do it. And that's what they did. Bernie Gersten, who was the executive producer of Lincoln Center, says, Boza, we need you to be with us. And that became the relationship with Lincoln Center.
Perfect.
And that relationship lasted for almost 10 years. And Miss
Amazing.
Irene Gandy and I
Mhm.
had the pleasure after the Broadway run to take it to different states. She and I were marketing and promoting Serafina. So it's been a really great journey. Um, I was so disappointed that the last show we were going to do was called Township Fever, and Lincoln Center couldn't get any theater to present it in because the theaters were booked, and a decision was made to go to Brooklyn, to the Brooklyn Academy of Music, and to get them to see if they would partner with Lincoln Center, and they said yes. And we took that show, which was bigger show than Serafina, uh,
Wow.
and we opened up in Brooklyn, and it was very, very successful. We had producers who wanted to take it to Broadway, but then the Gulf War broke out, and these were Jewish investors in Jewish culture, and they made a decision that they couldn't take it to Broadway because their funds were being going toward the dismantling of the war, the apartheid. So I've been very, very fortunate that Serafina still lives, still people still talk about it. Hugh Masekela and I and Mulvaney, we were nominated for Grammys for the music of the show. It did a lot for me. It did a lot for me. And then I've been going back and forth to South Africa. And my vision now is that either the end of this year or the beginning of next year, Serafina comes back to the United States.
Wow. Yes. because this came before I came here, so I want to see it.
Yes, yes, yes.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. This was really a very incredible story that we needed to tell.
Thank you.
And now we are going to go to another um, your career, a little bit of your career, because we want to arrive to the reason why we are talking specifically today, which is the inaugural VOZA Rivers Legacy Series. We want to talk about that. And we are going to do it in the second part of our show. Right now, I wanted to ask you your vision for mentorship and artistic renewal led you to major initiatives to like Harlem Week and the creation together with Black former Black Panther and now Professor Jamal Joseph of the Impact Repertory Theater, which is the very incredible youth division of the New Heritage Theater. And you earned with that Grammy and Oscar nomination for groundbreaking work. Tell us a little bit about the Impact Repertory, very briefly, Impact Repertory and Harlem Week.
Well, when I met Jamal Joseph, Jamal was a member of an organization called the Black Panther Party.
Mhm.
And because of that, Jamal was 15 when he joined the Panthers. There was a big trial uh, for Black Panthers. They were being accused of a lot of uh, violations of law. I'll just put it that way because
Yeah.
I don't want to take all the time just talking about that. I met Jamal when he came out of prison. He was serving 12 years in Leavenworth prison, and he got all of his degrees while he was in prison to his master's degree. And he came out of prison. While he was in prison, he decided to create a theater company, and he wrote a lot of scripts for the prisoners to be a part of what he was doing. He comes out of prison and he has an opportunity to meet me through another man who was in prison, at a different prison, named Charles Dutton. And Jamal went to him because Charles Dutton was a man actor who was arrested for manslaughter and did time and came out of prison and went to Yale University. And
Wow.
when he got to Yale University, August Wilson, great playwright, put him in all of his plays. And so Jamal thought that was a great role model. So Jamal comes out of prison armed with scripts, and he goes to Black theater companies asking them, would they look to support his work? And
Mm.
everybody said, Jamal, how many people are in the play? And he would say, oh, I got, a lot of people, because in prison, I had to write for all of these different
Yeah,
people,
yeah.
different. And they said, well, it's a little above what we normally would do. What happened is that Jamal and his wife found Charles Dutton. Charles Dutton said, I saw a guy at a show called Sarafina, and there were 35 actors,
Wow.
and he lives in Harlem. You live in Harlem. You should meet him because maybe he could help you. And that began the relationship with Jamal, because I did meet Jamal and I optioned his play. And through that relationship, we decided to work together. And part of what Jamal did when he was in the Panthers, he was part of the breakfast program for kids, and he and I decided that we needed to create a youth program for our theater that would also address those kind of issues. We should take kids, we should do a free program, and we'd teach them the grandma and grandpa values. And that's what we would do. That's our give back to our community, would be that we would have a youth division. So we took kids back then as young as 12, as old as 18, and we trained them, and it was a free program. And we taught them how to write music and dance and be articulate and be committed to the community. And we called them ambassadors. The group was called Impact. I for inspiration, M for motivation, P for preparation, A for activism, C for commitment, T for teamwork. They named themselves Impact. They
Wow.
came back and told us, and we said, what the heck? Look what we've done. And of course, they wrote music for a major film called August Rush. Their music was accepted. They were nominated for a Grammy, and then the next year, for an Oscar for the music in the film and a Grammy for the soundtrack of the film. And that is my youth group, and they're still operating today. They're in residency at City College, and now the ages are 8 years old
Oh
to
my
18
God.
because we have these young actors that are brilliant.
Brilliant. And I've seen them perform many times, and every time is a discovery because they are absolutely amazing. So, what you're
Yes.
doing with this youth is really giving them a future that otherwise they wouldn't have had.
Yes, yes. And now we're hiring them to work with us and to be part of the leadership as we move forward.
Fantastic. This is the perfect ending to the first part of our conversation. Thank you, Woza.